You put a mask on this morning before you walked out the door. The capable one. The one who has it together. You probably didn't even notice you did it. Most of us can't get through a Tuesday without it. The problem isn't the mask. The problem is what the mask feeds in the dark while you're wearing it. If the last piece showed us that our conscious I is an exhausted rider trying to hold the reins of a wild, impulsive it, then this one is about the dangerous tricks we play on ourselves just to walk out our front door every morning. As the early psychoanalytic movement grew, Carl Jung, Freud's brilliant and eventually estranged contemporary, realized that looking at the mind as just a simple battle between animal impulses and parental guilt didn't capture the whole truth. He looked at modern society and noticed something profound. To survive the real world, we don't just manage our impulses, we partition our very identity. When you step into your workspace, log onto a virtual call, or walk into a social gathering, you don't bring your raw, unedited self. You bring a curated version. Jung gave us the exact vocabulary to understand why this performance is so exhausting, and how it directly fuels our most destructive habits. Act 1. The theatrical split, persona versus ego. Jung looked back at ancient history to decode modern human suffering. He adopted the word persona, the Latin term for the physical masks worn by actors in classical Greek theater. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the social mask you wear to adapt to the outside world. It is the professional, polite, hyper-capable version of yourself that you present to co-workers, authorities, and neighbors. It's your LinkedIn profile come to life. Behind that mask lies your ego, which, as we established, is simply your true conscious core. The I that exists when the house is empty, the door is locked, and the performance is over. The persona is not inherently evil. It is a vital, structural survival mechanism. If you brought your raw, unfiltered thoughts, moods, and existential dread into a corporate meeting or a neighborhood association, your life would fall apart within a week. The mask protects you. It acts as a buffer between your fragile conscious self and the harsh demands of society. The psychological disaster occurs when you commit the ultimate design error. You mistake your persona for your ego. If you spend 10 hours a day pretending to be the unflappable, perfectly composed leader, the hyper-successful corporate executor, or the flawless family rock, you begin to buy your own marketing. When you over-identify with the public mask, your conscious I loses touch with who it actually is. You become an actor who refuses to take off the costume after the play ends, suffocating the real person underneath. Act 2. The shadow in the basement. Every time you force your persona to smile, stay polite, and look like you have everything together, the thoughts and traits that don't fit that polished image have to go somewhere. Jung called this dark storage unit the shadow. The shadow is the psychological basement of your mind. It is the repository for every raw emotion, aggressive impulse, perceived weakness, and hidden desire that your social mask rejects because it isn't acceptable to your culture or your self-image. Here is the fundamental law of the shadow, the one you have to understand to break your loops. The shadow is a closed system, but it is not a dead one. You cannot simply lock your fears, your rage, or your unaddressed trauma in a dark room and expect them to starve to death. They sit in the dark, gathering energy. The more pristine and perfect your public persona appears, the more massive, volatile, and starved your shadow becomes. Jung warned that when you completely ignore your shadow, it manifests in two highly destructive ways. Projection. Because your conscious mind refuses to admit that it holds dark or weak traits, your brain automatically projects them onto the people around you. You look at a coworker, a partner, or a public figure and feel a sudden, irrational, white-hot hatred for their flaws. In reality, Jung says, you are looking into a psychological mirror, reacting violently to the very traits you are desperately suppressing in yourself. The hijack. When the shadow is completely starved of acknowledgement, it waits until your conscious I is physically or cognitively depleted. Then it bursts through the basement door and takes over the controls. Let me show you what that looks like when it isn't a diagram, when it's a Tuesday. I walk into a business meeting and I put the mask on. The competent one, the guy with the answers, unflappable, running the room. That's the persona, and I wore it well. It's most of how I got where I got. At dinner after, the mask loosens a notch, a little more of the real me, a joke I wouldn't have made in the boardroom. Then somebody says, "Let's grab a drink." We hit the bar, and here's where it turns. A few in, the mask doesn't just come off, it changes hands. The persona steps back, the shadow steps up, every raw, basement thing I'd held down all day, and then the alcohol takes the wheel from both of them. I'm not performing anymore, and I'm not steering anymore. The hijacker is driving, and I couldn't see it. That's the part that matters. I felt loose, honest, finally myself. The tell always came at breakfast, from the people who'd been there. "Wow, you were different last night. Not the good kind of different. I couldn't believe what you said." That's the shadow's night, handed back to me over eggs, with the critic waking up right on schedule to make me pay for it. That's the whole chapter in one night. The mask, the basement, the hijack, the shame. I lived that loop for years before I had the words for it. Act 3, the spiritual search for wholeness. This brings us to the exact intersection where Jungian psychology meets the mechanics of recovery. Historically, Carl Jung played an indirect but monumental role in the creation of Alcoholics Anonymous. Around 1931, Jung treated a patient named Roland Hazard, a highly successful businessman who had completely succumbed to chronic alcoholism. Jung tried every psychological tool in his inventory, but Hazard repeatedly relapsed. Finally, Jung looked at him and delivered a brutal, unvarnished truth. Your condition is medically and psychologically hopeless. No talk therapy can save you. Your only chance is a total, radical spiritual awakening, a profound restructuring of your inner self. What happened next is worth tracing, honestly, because the chain is longer than the legend usually makes it out to be, and the real version is more interesting. Hazard took the advice and found sobriety through the Oxford Group, a Christian fellowship of the era. He carried the message to a struggling friend, Ebby Thatcher, who in turn carried it to his old drinking companion, a man named Bill Wilson. Wilson, after his own conversion experience, went on to co-found Alcoholics Anonymous. Jung was not the founder of AA. He was the spark at the very head of the fuse, 4 people removed from the explosion. Decades later, in a 1961 letter replying to a note of thanks from Bill Wilson, Jung put the insight into words that have echoed through recovery ever since. A craving for alcohol was, he wrote, a low-level manifestation of a deeply human instinct, the thirst for wholeness, the union with God in older language. In Latin, the word for alcohol is spiritus. Jung noted the profound irony that humanity uses the exact same word for high-level spiritual connection and the high-proof chemical you buy at the liquor store. When a person is trapped behind a suffocating corporate or social persona, their conscious I is living in a state of starvation. They are lonely, rigid, and disconnected. Drinking is not a random act of stupidity. It is the ego's desperate attempt to escape its own boundaries. Alcohol temporarily dissolves the rigid persona, silences the hypercritical conscious mind, and allows the repressed energy of the shadow to finally flood the system. It is a cheap, temporary, chemical counterfeit for true wholeness. Act 4, the trap of suppression. The lesson here is a direct warning. You cannot fix a broken design with more suppression. When a person realizes they are caught in a destructive habit loop, their immediate automatic reaction is to double down on their persona. They say, I just need to be stronger. I need to put on a braver face, work harder, look better, and pretend this isn't happening. They try to build a thicker mask, but a thicker mask only creates a darker basement. What broke the cycle of self-sabotage for me wasn't more willpower poured into the performance. It was finally stopping that. For me, It meant opening the basement door, looking directly at the shadow, and starting to integrate the raw parts of myself I'd been running from. Moving away from the exhausting performance of the mask and into the messy, active construction of an integrated life. I can't tell you that's the answer for you. I can only tell you it was mine. Sources: Jung's 1961 letter to Bill Wilson describing the craving for alcohol as a low-level thirst for wholeness, the union with God, appears in Jung, C.G., 1975, Letters, Volume 2, 1951 to 1961, Princeton University Press. On Jung's indirect role in the roots of AA and the recovery through conversion reading, see Addenbrook, M. 2015, Saying Goodbye to the Hero, Jung, Liber Novus, and Conversion from Addiction, Journal of Analytical Psychology, 63, 371 to 389. A note: this is personal memoir, not medical advice. I'm not a doctor or licensed clinician, and nothing here is a diagnosis, treatment, or cure, only an account of what worked for me. Alcoholism is a serious medical disease that deserves professional care. Please don't use anything I write to delay or replace real treatment. If you're struggling, talk to a licensed professional. In the U.S., call or text 988, Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or 1-800-662-4357, SAMPS, both free, confidential, and 24/7. That's Arch and Owl. Read the whole chapter free on Substack and follow along for a new chapter every week.